Welcome back to the List of channel, where we explore the catalogs of human history, one bullet point at a time. When you think of a scientific breakthrough, you probably imagine a genius in a pristine white lab coat, shouting Eureka, while a choir of angels sings in the background. But in reality, science is often messy, stubborn, and more often than we'd like to admit, happens because someone forgot to do the dishes or refused to listen to a math nerd. Today, we're looking at the list of scientific discoveries that almost didn't happen. These are the moments where humanity nearly missed out on modern medicine, space exploration, and even the air we breathe, all because of bad timing, bad attitudes, or a lot of bird poop. First up on our list, penicillin. If you've ever had an infection and didn't die of it, you can thank Alexander Fleming's lack of housekeeping. In 1928, Fleming was a brilliant researcher, but he wasn't exactly what you'd call a neat freak. Before leaving for a 2-week vacation, he left a pile of petri dishes containing Staphylococcus bacteria sitting in a sink. When he returned, he noticed something strange. A stray mold Penicillium notatum had drifted in through an open window and landed on one of the plates. Everywhere the mold grew, the bacteria were dead. Now, a normal person might have just washed the dish and moved on. And in fact, Fleming almost did. He initially struggled to gain interest from the scientific community. He even gave up on it for a few years because he couldn't figure out how to mass produce it. It wasn't until a decade later that other scientists stumbled across his old papers and realized he'd discovered the world's first antibiotic. If Fleming had been a little more tidy, or if those papers had stayed buried, a simple paper cut might still be a death sentence today. Moving on to a discovery that came from the depths of space and the bottom of a bird, in 1964, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson were using a massive horn antenna in New Jersey to map radio signals from the Milky Way. But they had a problem. No matter where they pointed the antenna, they heard a persistent, annoying hum, a low-frequency noise that wouldn't go away. They tried everything to fix it. They checked the wiring, they looked for local radio interference. They even climbed inside the giant horn and found that a pair of pigeons had set up a home there. They spent hours scrubbing out what they politely called white dielectric material, which is just a fancy scientific term for pigeon poop. They cleaned the antenna, they evicted the birds, the hum stayed. It turned out that noise wasn't a glitch or bird droppings. It was the cosmic microwave background radiation, the literal afterglow of the Big Bang. They had accidentally discovered the birth of the universe, but they spent months trying to scrub it away with a bucket of soapy water. Next, let's go back to 1895 for the discovery of X-rays. Wilhelm Röntgen was experimenting with cathode ray tubes in a darkened room. He had covered the tube with heavy black cardboard so no light could escape. And yet, across the room, a screen coated in fluorescent material began to glow. Röntgen was baffled. He put objects between the tube and the screen, a book, a piece of wood, and the glow remained. Then, he put his own hand in front of it. He saw the shadow of his own bones. This was a what on earth moment that almost didn't happen because Röntgen wasn't actually looking for it. He was studying electricity. If he hadn't noticed that tiny glow in the corner of his eye in a dark room, medical imaging might have been delayed by decades. Instead, we got the X-ray. And Röntgen's wife got the fright of her life when he asked her to place her hand in the beam for the first of her medical X-ray. Her reaction, "I have seen my death." Talk about a tough crowd. Our fourth entry involves a planet that was hiding in plain sight, Neptune. In the 1840s, a young British mathematician named John Couch Adams noticed that Uranus wasn't moving the way it should. It was being tugged by something. He did the math and calculated exactly where a new, unknown planet should be. He took his findings to the Astronomer Royal, George Airy. What did Airy do? He basically told Adams to get lost. He didn't believe the math and didn't bother to look through a telescope. It wasn't until a French mathematician, Urbain Le Verrier, did the same math and sent it to a German observatory that anyone bothered to check. They found Neptune in less than an hour, right where the ignored math said it would be. Britain almost lost the credit for a whole planet because of an "I'm too busy for this" email from the 19th century. Now, let's talk about a discovery that was rejected not because of poop or math, but because of pure ego. In 1982, Don Scheckman was looking at an aluminum-manganese alloy under an electron microscope. He saw a pattern that, according to everything we knew about physics at the time, was impossible. It was a quasicrystal, a structure that was ordered but never repeated. When he showed it to his colleagues, they laughed at him. His lab head literally handed him a textbook on crystallography and told him to go back and study the basics. The legendary chemist Linus Pauling even publicly ridiculed him, saying, "There are no quasicrystals, only quasi-scientists." Scheckman was told to leave his research group. He was ostracized for years, but he stayed his ground. Eventually, Other scientists replicated his work, and the entire field of chemistry had to be rewritten. Sheckman went from being a laughingstock to winning the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2011. Sometimes, being the only person who's right is a very lonely place to be. Our sixth discovery is one that almost cost us the entire planet: the ozone hole. In the mid-1980s, British scientists on the ground in Antarctica noticed that ozone levels in the atmosphere were dropping at an alarming rate. But there was a problem. NASA's multi-billion-dollar satellites weren't showing any hole at all. Why? Because the software was too smart. The computers processing the satellite data were programmed to automatically ignore any data that looked impossible or extreme. The computers saw the massive drop in ozone and thought, "That can't be right, it must be a glitch," and simply deleted the data. It wasn't until scientists manually went back and looked at the raw, rejected data that they realized the atmosphere was literally disappearing over the poles. If we had continued to trust the smart software, we might have waited until it was too late to ban CFCs and save the planet's UV shield. Finally, we have the story of Helicobacter pylori, the bacteria that causes stomach ulcers. For nearly a century, doctors told patients that ulcers were caused by stress, spicy food, and too much stomach acid. It was medical gospel. But in the 1980s, Barry Marshall and Robin Warren noticed a specific bacteria hanging out in the stomachs of ulcer patients. The medical community ignored them. They said bacteria couldn't survive in the acid-drenched environment of the stomach. Marshall was so frustrated by the rejection that he decided to perform a self-experiment. In a move that is definitely not recommended for your high school science fair, Marshall took a beaker, filled it with a culture of the bacteria he'd grown from a patient, and drank it. A few days later, he developed massive inflammation and a precursor to an ulcer. He then cured himself with antibiotics, proving that it was an infection, not stress. He literally put his own life on the line because his colleagues were too stubborn to change their minds. He eventually won the Nobel Prize, presumably after a very long nap and some antacids. The common thread in all these stories: science isn't just about facts. It's about paying attention to the glitches. It's about the mold you almost threw away, the noise you tried to scrub off, and the math you almost ignored. If you enjoyed this trip through the almost nots of history, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us keep the list of coming your way. What's your favorite accidental discovery? Or is there a discovery we missed that belongs on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss a new list. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.